Hello, National readers. Welcome back to another edition of the National Podcast. My name's Laura Webster. I'm the editor of the newspaper, and I'm joined today by our political editor, Xander Elliards.
Hello.
Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no problem.
We've got quite a bit of news to get through, as you will probably be expecting. We are going to be talking a bit about the Peter Murrell case and Nicola Sturgeon fallout from that. We also have some news about Question Time and its disgusting AI panel last night. Maybe disgusting is a bit harsh, but
some people are calling it disgusting.
It gave me a feeling, and we'll touch on the uncanny valley thing, but it gave me that disgusted feeling in my body when I watched it. And we're also going to finish on some positive news today, because I've really been trying my best to find positive stories to finish up the podcast with, rather than leaving you all on these like really bleak notes.
Yeah, for the weekend as well.
For the weekend, you're getting a nice positive story. So let's kick things off with this Peter Murrell news. Former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said she is having probably the worst week of her life after her former husband admitted embezzling more than £400,000 from the party she once led. Conceding she was, quote, not okay, the former SNP leader said she had been deceived, misled, and betrayed by her ex-husband, Peter Murrell. Her comments came as she appeared in public for the first time since Murrell, who she separated from last year, appeared in court on Monday. He has been remanded in custody after pleading guilty to embezzling a total of £400,310.65 from the SNP between 2010 and 2022, with the cash spent on a range of items, including a motorhome, cars, expensive watches, and a telescope. Speaking at Listowel Writers' Week in County Kerry, Sturgeon told the audience, quote, "This has been probably the worst week of my life. The last few years have had some tough ones for me, but this one I think surpasses all of them." The former SNP leader stressed she had been, quote, completely exonerated after a 2-year-long, very forensic police investigation, which saw police officers search the home she and Murrell had shared. After the event, Conor Gillies of Sky News attempted to put questions to Sturgeon, but she walked away. She had said she would not be taking questions from the press. We will show you a clip of Conor following her around the room in an effort to get comment.
Nicola, can you understand why?
Filming in here, sorry.
Nicola, can you understand why some people don't believe you when you said that? Nicola, why won't you answer questions from the media in relation to your husband?
So, as you can see, Nicola Sturgeon was not very keen to speak to the press yesterday. Former SNP MP Anne McLaughlin commented, quote, "If I behaved like this, Conor, I wouldn't be telling the world, unless, of course, I wanted the world to know what a vile person I was." Shameful. And meanwhile, national columnist Kelly Given added, "Hounded for the crimes of a man, you should be ashamed. This is disturbing to watch." Of course, it does provoke questions around what is like a reasonable way to go about getting an answer from politicians when there's scrutiny upon them, and what crosses the line. And I think that can be a very subjective thing. And Xander, anyway, this wasn't the only story about Nicola, about Murrell from yesterday. Maybe you can give us a bit of an overview on what you were working on, which was to do with the concerns about public money being part of the embezzlement, and also what Murray Foote, who was Murrell's successor, has to say about this whole saga.
Yeah, so let's start with Murray Foote, because I feel like there's maybe slightly less to say there. So Murray Foote was obviously, for people that don't know, the person who took over as SNP chief executive after Peter Murrell resigned. That was in April 2023, off the top of my head, that Murrell resigned, and Murray Foote, former editor of the Daily Record, took on the role later that year. I think it was October. Foote had been the SNP's communications chief, but he actually resigned after finding out, funnily enough, that Peter Murrell had lied to him about membership numbers. He'd taken what Murrell had told him, as he would do, at face value, gone out and spoken to the press and said, "You guys are barking up the wrong tree. You don't know what you're talking about. These are the real numbers," only to then find out that he'd been misled by Murrell, so resigned. He said he felt his position was untenable, I think, and he couldn't be going out and saying these things to the press, having confidence in them himself, only to find out that he was being deceived, which obviously it takes on a whole new light now. But yeah, so he wrote an article for the Courier, Murray Foote did, just, well, saying that he was relieved that Murrell had pleaded guilty, because I mean, I expect everybody in the SNP was relieved that he pleaded guilty, like from Nicola Sturgeon to Murray Foote to John Swinney. If there had been a not guilty plea, there would have been a full trial where they no doubt would have been asked to give evidence. Yeah, Murray Foote, Nicola Sturgeon, Humza Yousaf, John Swinney, all of these really, really top SNP figures would have ended up in the dock getting cross-examined, and that would have been an absolute media circus. So I can see why he was relieved to avoid that. But Murray was saying that he did think there were unanswered questions around the investigation into Peter Murrell, around the guilty plea. One of them being, why on earth did he do this? Like, why did a man that was one of the most powerful people in Scottish politics, was in a household where they had more than enough money to get by? You know, when we talk about the energy price cap going up by £200 in July, and how that's going to be pushing people below the poverty line, that's not on Peter Murrell's radar. Like, him and Nicola Sturgeon were completely comfortable. They did not need to be embezzling money to be buying £70 toilet seats or whatever stupid little things were on it. But there was a real pattern. I think our colleague Abby Garton Crosby pulled together a list of everything on the 130 odd pages of the indictment, of everything that he'd bought with embezzled cash. And it really is a pattern. In the early years, there's not very much. It's a couple of things here and there. And then it really starts to go up. He's buying the bigger ticket items. He's getting more and more. So, yeah, Murray was saying there are one key question: why on earth did Peter Murrell do this? He threw away his marriage. He threw away his career. Obviously, he'd already climbed to the top, but he threw away basically his entire life, the party that he had given 20 years of his life to, just for some baubles, essentially. I think it's some kind of, I mean, I'm not some kind of psychological expert, but it comes across as some form of kleptomania, where he just is like, oh, I got away with it. Maybe I can get away with it a bit bigger.
Yeah, I think it looks like compulsive behavior.
It seems
100%.
like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of compulsive behavior, people are often hiding it from their nearest and dearest, like drug addictions and eating disorders, things like this.
Gambling addiction too is a good kind of comparison, I think, for something like this.
Yeah, yeah. And you often, not you personally, but a person often does hide that from their loved ones. And yeah, that was the second question that Murray Foote was asking. He was saying, did Nicola know? It's the question that everybody's asking. What did Nicola know? Did she know? Murray's conclusion was that he didn't believe that she did. He just doesn't think that there is, again, any reason for her to do this. Like, Nicola Sturgeon is a politician. Her entire what's the right word for it? Her entire career is built on her reputation.
Yeah.
Why would she throw away decades of work building this reputation that was the envy of Scottish politicians? Every single politician in Scotland would have given their left arm for a party leader that was as popular as Nicola Sturgeon. She was far and away. It was ridiculous. Why would she throw that away for a salt and pepper shaker that she can afford anyway? I do understand what Murray's saying. I really struggle to believe that Nicola Sturgeon knew what was happening in terms of the embezzlement and all of that. But I do think there are legitimate questions to be asked of her nonetheless. And I think we're kind of losing sight of the fact that she's a victim in a lot of ways of her husband's deception. And people are treating her as some kind of conspirator, but she hasn't been charged. Like, they did do a big police investigation and they didn't find anything worth prosecuting her for or anything like that. So I do think there's a balance to be struck, and maybe we're not quite at the right balance.
For sure. And I think as well, kind of leading from that, this is such a difficult one for John Swinney to approach and to handle, because, it's about he wasn't there in their house, like, and he didn't see what their relationship was like. But he was closely involved in the SNP for a very long time. And I think those of us who were reporting on the situation with the SNP when Nicola was in charge, it was well known that Nicola had this little clique at the top of the party who controlled the flow of information, who controlled access. Like, it was incredibly closed off from everybody else. And people were concerned about she hadn't appointed a successor and everything. There was sort of hoarding of power. And I do feel like that has come back to haunt them in a way, because that mentality leads to being defensive, and then it leads to you like putting the drawbridges up and not letting anybody come in. And when we're seeing these videos go around of her kind of shutting down speculation around what's going on with the accounts, I mean, we will never really know for sure unless new information comes to light what that came from. But it's hard not to see that as part of that defensiveness, as part of that mentality of we're under attack, we're just going to stick to our little world. And I don't know what the right answer is for everyone taking this on now, because for John Swinney, I think I understand why he's saying we shouldn't have an inquiry into this, because, well, yeah, there's been a police investigation, and I feel like Holyrood probably has other big issues that relate to people's lives that they need to address rather than sort of internal SNP problems.
Yeah, the calls for an inquiry are absolutely ridiculous politicking.
It is, but at the same time, it's so difficult. Once you say no to one of these things, that becomes the story. And it was the same thing when...
That's why they're doing it.
No,
that's
exactly.
why people like Labour, Scottish Labour, the Scottish Conservatives are calling for this parliamentary inquiry.
Precisely, but it's such a trap. That's my point.
Yeah.
It's such a trap, because it was the same with the grooming gangs. Like, there's already an inquiry going on into like historic abuse in schools and things in Scotland. And because this one particular grooming gang suggestion inquiry got voted down, that then became this big story about how the SNP were shutting down scrutiny and hiding things.
That made more sense, because there might be something to learn from a public inquiry or a parliamentary inquiry into structural institutional failings in Scottish institutions. That's not what this is. This is a political party that is its own thing. Like you said, concerns about Nicola Sturgeon's kind of clique at the top. Like, what's Anna Sarwell running Scottish Labour like? What's Russell Finlay running the Scottish Conservatives like? They're doing the same thing, and they know full well a parliamentary inquiry into the party would produce nothing of value for anybody apart from the SNP's political opponents looking to make hay of it. Like, what's the inquiry going to conclude? Like, don't give an embezzler the top position in your party. Like, okay, thanks. How much is that? Like 3 million or something? Like, more. It would be millions and millions to find out don't put embezzlers in positions of power. But
yeah,
it's a waste of time. That down at Westminster as well, like the Tories now writing to the Scottish Affairs Committee, asking the Scottish Affairs Committee to probe the SNP. It's like the Scottish Affairs Committee is designed to look at the Scotland office and its associated bodies. It's not meant to just probe your opponents because you fancy it. Like, it's really, really a misuse of the committee.
It's a bit Trumpian, isn't it, actually, when you think about it?
I don't think it should be. They should be looking into political parties like that.
No
one was calling for a parliamentary inquiry into the Tories under Boris Johnson.
No,
because they all know that's not how these things work. It would just be, that's ridiculous. Like, it's just, yeah, there's a lot of politicking going on around all of this, a lot of it, and it's obscuring the actual real questions, because there are real questions here to be answered, but they don't need a parliamentary inquiry. We just need, Nicola Sturgeon to tell her story. I was reading that she did say she was going to and planning to once the legal process is over, which I think is something we've kind of glossed over. It's like, right, Peter Murrell's pled guilty, that's it, job done. But actually, there's a hearing about the facts of the case on June the 2nd. There's no doubt going to be a lot that's going to come out there.
We'll be covering that.
Yeah,
we'll have a reporter in the court for that next week.
Yeah, and then the sentencing is 3 weeks after that on June the 23rd. So there's actually quite a lot of stuff left to happen over the next few weeks, where I can imagine that she probably does not want to tell the whole story yet, because she wants to see what comes out. But there are questions. Like, she said that she didn't know about the existence of the camper van until 2023, but the S&P accounts for 2021 had 80 grand worth of motor vehicles on them. So that came out in 2022. So we, the public at large, knew that there was 80 grand of motor vehicles on the S&P accounts in 2021 that hadn't been there in 2020. Whether that's the motorhome depreciating, whether that's the Jag, whether that's there was like a VW as well, we don't know. But there's questions to be asked there, and there's questions of Nicola Sturgeon. Why didn't you have questions about this 80 grand asset that's appeared on your party's books overnight? Right. So yeah,
it maybe suggests a bit more negligence than anything else, but hey, we'll see what happens. Thomas Muir is in the comments saying that it's a party inquiry that's needed where the membership can be involved since it was their money. I don't disagree with that at
the
all.
S&P that's the right way of doing it, I think. Just rather than all the politicking about the getting some kind of KC to run a public inquiry, it's just, that's not how.
Yeah, the irony of all that is so much more taxpayer money would be spent on having a parliamentary inquiry or getting the Scottish Affairs Committee to look into it or whatever. Like, if everyone's worried about that, then that's only going to make the situation worse. It's already been £2 million spent on Operation Branchform at police level.
More than that. That's
more
just
than
like
that.
Basic costs, isn't it? That doesn't include loads of things. Doesn't include the Crown Office and all of their expert time, which costs inordinate amounts of money.
Martin in the comments is also, he disagrees. He says that she lied to the public. She said she was cooperating with the police, but made no comment. Her hubby then took the rap. She got away with it. And there should be an investigation into Joanna Cherry being ignored. Martin, what I would say to that is that it is quite standard legal advice to say no comment in a police interview. And her lawyer, Amber Amor, has come forward and said that she then did give detailed answers to the police in written format afterwards. So I know there's a lot of speculation right now about that no comment thing, but I do believe when it's a brand new case and you've just been taken into the police station, the vast majority of lawyers are going to tell you just to say no comment.
Yeah, you would expect them to tell you to say no comment. I think Russell Finlay is, again, politicking with that. He knows full well that the line, like, saying no comment, that's what organized criminals do. And it's like, yeah, of course, because organized criminals have good lawyers, competent lawyers that give them good legal advice. Like, you're literally saying, I wonder what Boris Johnson was saying when he was hauled into the interview room about like breaking lockdown rules. I bet it was no comment, no comment, no comment. I bet it wasn't, you know what, I'll tell you everything.
Yeah, let's look that up. That's a good one to look into.
Well, I don't know if you can FOI these things. I don't think you can, because it's meant to remain private.
I think Wings Over Scotland said that he was going to FOI what the written answers were to the police, but I just don't think there's any way that they would release that.
I don't know if you can do that.
I mean, we shall see. Regardless, it is a story that we could just keep talking about and keep getting into.
There's an awful lot to say.
But for now, we should probably move on to our next story.
Okay.
The BBC's flagship politics show Question Time has been met with disbelief after using artificial intelligence to create a mock panel featuring Winston Churchill and Mahatma Gandhi. The show was already facing questions about the lack of balance on the panel, which featured 3 pro-AI voices from the industry, a Labour minister known for promoting the use of AI, and the Tory shadow technology secretary. Green leader in England and Wales, Zach Polanski, suggested that tech billionaire Larry Ellison had been allowed to, quote, buy an entire Question Time episode. The AI-generated panel has raised further questions about how the BBC was presenting the technology and whether there was appropriate scrutiny of its drawbacks and reliance on copyrighted material. One of the Question Time panelists, for example, Victor Ripperbelli, I hope I pronounced that name correctly, runs an AI video generation company. Let's take a look at the clip that I previously said made me feel yucky.
On tonight's panel, one of the most influential figures of the 20th century and the man who helped secure victory over Nazi Germany, our greatest wartime leader, Winston Churchill. Frida Kahlo is one of the most recognizable artists on the planet, famous for her many self-portraits. Her work explored gender, class, and race in Mexican society. Mahatma Gandhi led India to independence from the British, inspiring peaceful, resistant movements across the world. Emmeline Pankhurst was the head of the British suffragette movement. After staging hunger strikes and petitioning the king, she won women the right to vote. That would be something, wouldn't it, if they really were on our panel? Of course they're not. They are AI generated. Just a small insight into the use of technology. We thought we'd get started with that. But let's introduce our human panel with our politicians and AI experts who can guide us through this whole massive topic.
Yeah, that makes me feel sick to look at, to be honest. We were just discussing before we came onto the podcast the concept of the uncanny valley, which is when something is trying to look human, but there's something a little bit off about it.
Yeah, it's like, it's the closer, if you draw like the graph, the closer that something gets to looking human, the more you like it. So if you get a toaster and then you slap a face on the toaster, you're going to like it more than you did when it was just a previous toaster. And then you make the toaster look even more human by giving it like a more detailed face and more emotions, and you like it even more. And eventually you end up so close to this human toaster hybrid that you have a massive dip in how much people like it.
And you hate the toaster.
And then you're back to, once you're full human, people love them again. So that's what the uncanny valley is. It's that massive dip in between where it looks almost human.
Yeah.
But you're like, what is that human toaster doing in front of me? It makes me feel really weird.
Yeah, that's how I felt looking at that.
The Gandhi, especially.
The Gandhi one is
they
just,
made him bow and stuff. It's like,
I don't like to. One of our colleagues was particularly upset at the way that Frida Kahlo was nodding along with Fiona Bruce introducing her. I don't like that at all. I mean, but just beside it, just kind of looking yucky and feeling like, wait, why is AI slop sort of getting onto the BBC's flagship politics show? There's kind of studious elements to this as well, aren't there? I wonder if you can speak a bit about that.
There's so much to say about it. Not least, like, what would that AI panel actually have to say to each other? Would Churchill, like everybody on like certain wings of UK politics, like Reform UK, treat Churchill as some kind of deity? I think if you actually had him on a panel with Emmeline Pankhurst and Mahatma Gandhi, you might hear an awful lot of sexism and racism that might change your mind about him being, whatever, the greatest wartime leader. What about the Duke of Marlborough? Never lost a battle. Anyway, there's so much to say about it. Yeah, not least the fact that the BBC is meant to be supporting creative industries. That's one of its raison d'etre. No, like it's meant to be creating drama that you want to see. It's meant to be creating comedy that makes people feel proud of their, like, where they're from and all of this stuff. It's meant to be supporting creative industries. What's this? This is fancy computer generated pictures of historical figures. Why? I don't get it. It's undermining the very things it's meant to be doing. And then they're like, isn't that so fun? Isn't that so great? A video of Frida Kahlo. Here's Victor Rapabelli, who runs an AI generation video company. Oh no, he didn't do that one. And have we thought through the fact that we're actively promoting, if not directly the same business, very much the business area of our panelist who's here?
How similar this is to like Richard Walker as an example of someone who goes on to Question Time. He used to go on fairly regularly.
Walker, the Tory, not the founder of the National.
He was the CEO of Iceland, I believe, Iceland. And imagine he went on the show and then they were also like promoting at the start of the episode, here's a bunch of things you can buy in supermarkets this week.
Yeah.
So it is, I can see where you're coming from with that.
I just think there's even more danger. One of the people they had on as kind of like the balancing voice, Mo Gordat, I think his name was. He's a former business director for Google X. Google X is like Google, but in secret. And it's like their research wing. You remember Dominic Cummings used to talk about moonshots all the time?
Yeah.
It's like the part of Google that are given huge amounts of funding to go for like moonshots. So he's very big on big technology, big ideas. And he was the voice of balance, I think, was how the BBC were presenting him. The Question Time was like, he's got a new film out examining the dangers of AI. It's called like Chasing Utopia, something like that. And it's like, well, okay, great. He's also on the record multiple times, including literally the other week, as saying that we should hand over world governance to AI. So this is a man who you're presenting as the kind of voice of reason on AI, and his stated position is that the world should be run by artificial intelligence, that we should get rid of evil world leaders. That's what he said. And have AI tell us all what to do, which again, another quote, he said, may be our salvation. That isn't a normal discussion on AI. That's fanaticism.
That's so extreme.
Yeah.
This idea that AI is like infallible and that it's completely separate from us is absurd. Who
Mm.
do you think trained it? Who do you think it gets its ideas from? From people who are flawed, who make mistakes. This is why when you see these experiments of when you leave a bunch of AI bots together and see what they come up with, it's always inevitably stomach-churningly awful because they make each other do worse and worse things. They lead each other to worse and worse conclusions. But ultimately, their ideas come from us. We have programmed them with the same biases and the same problems that we have. Like this suggestion that, oh, just leave it to AI, like that's impartial. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Sorry, I get quite wound up.
I mean, who would even program the world running AI?
Yeah.
Who would even program that? Someone's going to have some power.
Someone
and
with
it's just going to be
biases.
some tech billionaire that works for Google. And then we're going to put him on Question Time and be like, what do you think about the way that AI is running the world for us? He'd be like, yeah, I love the labor camps. It's definitely the most efficient way of doing things. Thank God the AI worked out the labor camps once everyone lost their jobs. I just don't think the BBC have thought this through at all. And I mean, they're now being run by a former Google exec. So like, I think we have to ask questions like, why is the BBC that's just been taken over by a Google exec, inviting a Google exec that wants the world to be run by AI on, and then just promoting AI by literally being like, isn't this great? Ha ha ha. And it's like, yeah, Toy Story was great in the 90s. Like, you could have done it then. You could have literally been like, here's our Question Time panel. It's Woody. It's Buzz Lightyear. It's Ham. I always liked Ham, Slotted Pig.
I like Slinky.
Yes, get
Slinky's
Slinky
my
on the
favorite.
fourth panelist. There's no gender balance there. They're all men. But do you see what I mean? It's got as much value. It really does have as much value. And then people be like, why are you promoting Pixar? And go, oh, no, it wasn't Pixar that did that. Oh, that's okay then. That's okay then. You're not promoting Pixar or whatever it might be. It's just... So I really think it's short-sighted and there was no balance. I think we've seen a fair number of people from like creative industries saying, why was there no representative of the creative industries? Like there are massive lawsuits against OpenAI, against Meta for reading people's books and using them to train their AI models without permission and without paying. I think it was Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO, say at one point a year or two ago, like, well, if we had to pay for all of that, we wouldn't be profitable.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay.
That's a problem.
That sounds like that sounds like you should probably address that in your business model.
Yeah.
Rather than have your business model be
theft.
Yeah.
It's theft.
Torrenting. We really like torrenting. Yes, that's just ridiculous.
It's large scale theft. And I understand why lots of people online were pretty angry about this particular Question Time incident, because I don't believe that issue of it stealing from the creative industries was particularly addressed.
It doesn't seem to be.
No.
It doesn't seem to be at all.
But we should move on to our next story because we are rapidly running out of time
Running out of time. If we had a clock, we would know that.
We're being too chatty. So we're going to have a very serious story and then we'll finish with something a bit lighter for you. So apologies, we're going to run a little bit over our usual half an hour today, but I do think these are both important stories to talk about. So if you bear with us, we will get you all informed and up to date. Benjamin Netanyahu has directed the Israel Defense Forces to increase control of Gaza to 70%. Speaking at a conference yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister said, quote, "We are currently squeezing Hamas. We now control 60% of the territory of the Strip. You know this. We were at 50, we moved to 60. My directive is to move to," before someone in the crowd said 100. He then said, "Let's go step by step. First of all, 70. Let's start with that. We're pressing them from all sides. We'll deal with the remnants." This expansion would contradict the terms of the ceasefire deal agreed between Israel and Hamas in October 2025 and comes as it continues to repeatedly strike Gaza. Netanyahu is wanted for arrest by the International Criminal Court for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. His Israeli government is separately accused of committing genocide in Gaza by some of the world's leading experts, including the International Association of Genocide Scholars. At least 738 Palestinians have been killed since this ceasefire came into effect in October, according to the Health Ministry. On Wednesday, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz wrote on Twitter X that his country had pledged to eliminate everyone who led the October 7th massacre in 2023. He added that the plan for voluntary immigration from Gaza would be implemented at the proper time and in the proper manner, although there are, of course, fears that this will amount to forced displacement, which is a war crime. Earlier this week, an aid worker for Medical Aid for Palestinians and their baby son were injured in Israeli strikes on Gaza. They are thankfully now both in a stable condition. We spoke to Medical Aid for Palestinians about that the other day. Xander, this is just relentless. And for a while, there was this international pressure kind of building and a bit more movement towards putting pressure on Israel, but it seems like that's just been wiped off the agenda.
Yeah.
Do you think that's mainly because there is this quote unquote ceasefire deal and that's kind of disguising what's really going on? Or do you think it's more than that?
I think that most people are just more self-interested, like the war in Iran and everything. It's like people are like, we need to look after our own first. I think that's the real reason for it. But I mean, yes, the quote unquote ceasefire is disguising what's really happening on the ground. And it's not even the ceasefire, it's like the reporting around it. I was reading the BBC's version of that story about Netanyahu saying that they're basically going to conquer 70% of Gaza. I mean, it's an open admission of war crimes, isn't it? As far as I'm hearing him say it. The BBC story didn't once mention, as you said, that he's wanted for arrest for war crimes by the ICC. It didn't mention the word genocide, God forbid, mention the word genocide. But it did say that Israel has continued to fire rockets on Gaza amid the ceasefire. Something like that. It's like really high up as well. What kind of double think is that? There's a ceasefire on, rockets over my head, don't look up. Do you know what I mean? No, there's no rockets. It's a ceasefire.
They're not official rockets if there's a ceasefire.
Yeah, they're not official rockets. Exactly. It's like, let's have some honesty in reporting. There is no ceasefire if Israel is shooting rockets into Gaza. Don't call it one. You're essentially lying, as far as I'm concerned, saying, oh, there's a ceasefire on, just ignore all the shooting. And they're doing the same thing in Lebanon, Israel are right now, forcing people north, taking more and more of the territory. I've forgotten the last number. Were they at 14% of Lebanese territory? I think.
That sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, they were definitely on 8, and I think it went up to 14 the last I read. But 70% of Gaza, 14% of Lebanon, like God knows what percent of Syria, like the Golan Heights and everything. Like these things are just being allowed to go on. Israel's just being allowed to get away with it left, right, and center. Like we heard international condemnation when Russia invaded Ukraine. Everyone was like, you can't just invade another country. But Gaza's been essentially an illegally occupied compound for so long now. And the Israelis are just saying, you know what, we're tired of that. We're just going to get rid of the compound, basically, and take it all for ourselves. And everyone's like, It's like, what do you mean just shrugging shoulders? Why haven't we heard Keir Starmer give a press conference this morning and say that is absolutely unacceptable, that is against international law? The UK will have no truck with Israel conquering 70% of Gaza. It's not happening. Everyone's just like, oh, well, that's probably okay. But what about that trade deal? Should we do some more negotiations on the trade deal? Like, no wonder they're not stopping, because they're not seeing any negative consequences whatsoever. Like, Netanyahu's finally got what he wants in dragging America into conflict with Iran, and that's going terribly. Like, no wonder the US are putting off this deal, because every time we hear a briefing of what's going to be in it, it looks like Iran's going to win the war, which would be so embarrassing for Donald Trump, who's so busy at home, like just jerking himself off, putting himself on the money, putting himself on the passports, putting himself on the... These people are egomaniacs. They're insane. And I think there's like this word that's going around, like sane washing, of how the media reports on people like Trump. He just rambles for ages saying nonsense, like how he's known his son for a very long time. And people just tidy it up into nice, tidy quotes and put it in the newspapers. And like,
It's really irresponsible.
it is. It's exactly what the BBC is doing with Netanyahu, with what they're doing with Trump, and who's made no secret of it. That AI generated video of him and Netanyahu lounging on a lounger, drinking cocktails in like Trump Gaza. Like they're being fully serious.
Yeah.
Like that's what is going to happen. Yeah, I just don't think there will be a Gaza on the map in 20 years. I think people will look around and say, "Oh, how did this happen?" And it'll be like, because you didn't tell people what was happening as it was happening, and we tried to tell you, I was listening to something the other day about in the US post World War II, there was a charge that people were had brought against them, including some really eminent scientists, that was being preeminently anti-fascist, like not preeminently, sorry, like too early. You do it too early. So you were allowed to be anti-fascist in the US by 1945. But in 1936, you weren't really allowed to be anti-fascist. The widespread view was that the Nazis in Germany were fine. They were just another foreign government. If in 1947, you could be shown to have been anti-Nazi 10 years earlier, that was considered too early to have been anti-Nazi. So that could show that you had communist tendencies. And I think we're seeing a similar thing now. There's such a thing where you can be anti-Israel too early. And I think we got to a point where it was like, oh no, maybe Israel is bad. Maybe you are allowed to be anti-Israel. Not like those crazy people that were anti-Israel in 2008. They were too early to being anti-Israel. Whereas actually they've just seen the truth and they've been trying to warn you. And you've just been dismissing them. And I think we're in danger of falling back into that stage where it's like Israel, what they're doing is normalized. And it will get back to, already the media isn't bothering. As I say, that BBC story doesn't even bother to mention that he's wanted for arrest by the International Criminal Court. It just winds me up. I'm really worried that it's going to end up in a place where Netanyahu is allowed to land in the UK and we won't try and arrest him and send him to the ICC. I think it's just going to get sanitized and washed. Gaza's going to get put off the map and everybody's just going to pretend that it never happened.
Well, a lot of people are very angry about it. So let's hope that those people, don't end up feeling numbed to how terrible the situation is, and we can make positive change out of that anger that a lot of us are experiencing. But shall we finish today on a positive story? And change the vibe a little bit. So this is a story relating to housing in Scotland, which is actually very, very good news. And it's a rare opportunity that I get to present some good news on here. So I hope that this makes everybody feel a little bit better by the end. Families living in 2 Fife villages will no longer lose their homes after the council agreed to buy the properties. We previously reported on how around 35 households in West Wemyss and Denbeath were told that they must leave their homes by private landlords Torah Capital, who bought the houses from Wemyss Property in September last year. At the time, the company promised tenants that their leases were secure, but then announced plans to sell the properties and issued mass eviction notices. But now the new purchase by Fife Council and the Scottish Government will allow tenants to remain in their homes. The properties will instead become part of the council's social housing stock, which is great. The more social housing stock we have, the better. So the Scottish Government is providing £2 million, with the remainder coming from the council. The council said the move will provide long-term housing security for residents, prevent homelessness, and help maintain established communities. Social Justice and Housing Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville said, quote, "I am pleased that the Scottish Government has been able to ensure tenants do not lose their homes, despite the fact that this will have been a very distressing time for them. It was pivotal that we acted swiftly and decisively to ensure that tenants remain protected and secure with a roof over their head and a place they can quite rightly continue to call their home, as they have done for years. By stepping in, that is precisely what we have achieved." So yeah, I think that's a positive note to end the podcast on. And I hope that in future situations like this, the Scottish Government and local councils are able to take similar action to make sure that people can stay in their own homes.
Yeah, build a lot more as well. I think,
yes.
I know there's been a lot of criticism of the amalgamation of social justice and housing into a single cabinet brief, but the two seem to go hand in hand, I think. So I think we'll see how it goes. But I'm optimistic that hopefully they will, have more programs like this, more initiatives where they actually do, as you say, more housing stock, more social housing stock, because it is a major issue.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Xander. I really
Yeah, no
appreciate
problem.
it. And to all of our listeners and viewers, thank you for making the time to come and watch or listen to us on a Friday afternoon. Remember, we are live on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 1 p.m. You can come and listen in or watch on YouTube, leave comments, get involved. There's usually people arguing about something in the comments. So if you want to let some steam off, you can go and argue about independence or Nicola Sturgeon or whatever you want. But we prefer it when you ask us questions. so please do consider asking us some questions. We'd be very happy to answer them. If you miss us live, you're able to listen back on all the usual places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. And you can also watch back on YouTube. We've got tons of extra stuff on there, great interviews. We had a great interview with John Swinney and Steph Braun yesterday, which you can check out. We've done some really fun stuff with Sinn Féin and Plaid Cymru recently, so give that a listen. So thank you so much for joining us. Oh, remember, subscription. We are offering 73 pence for 3 months at the moment. So if you're not currently subscribed to The National, I would highly recommend taking out that 73 pence subscription, because that's great value. And you can read about all these stories that we are talking about right now. Anyway, in the meantime, I suppose we'll see you on Monday, but have a wonderful weekend.